This morning, I saw this short clip that Frank Turek, my favorite evangelical apologist, posted online. I guess it's a feature from an interview that he does with Russell Brand. This is so noxious. This is so beyond the pale. I am torn between, is Frank Turek completely fatuous and ignorant and naive, or is he malevolent? I really don't know how to understand why somebody like this professed evangelical Christian apologist would platform somebody like Russell Brand and accept uncritically everything he has to say. But let's start by playing the clip, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Russell Brand.
Point at where you surrendered. What happened?
Well, I simultaneously got accused of rape in my country, the UK, while my son was having open heart surgery, like sort of simultaneously. I mean, at the same time. It was in all over the newspapers, and my son was in Great Ormond Street Hospital. Everything broke apart. And it was so poetic and amazing for this because it was the 2 weeks before October the 7th, and in the UK I was all over the news. 2023, the year of the attacks and atrocities there, and in the 2 weeks up to that, I was the newspaper every day. You know how it is when the news get hold of something. Sure. It was like every single day, advertising for complainants, new revelations, documentaries. It was like unbelievable. The machinery of media and state turned demonetization, like the reasons for it we could get into, but it's sort of irrelevant now, and I don't care anymore because I know who was behind it really. And like the two gods that I'd worshipped up until that point, curiously, as I suppose a sort of pantheistic pagan, and as Jordan Peterson once said, if God is everything, then God is anything. And I had been worshipping sex and fame. Those were the two things I'd been worshipping, sex and fame. Well, it was as if that somehow he used for good what the devil intended for ill, and shows me, this is what happens. Oh, you want to worship sex and fame, do you? How about being famous for rape? Like, oh my God. Wow. Oh Lord.
Okay, so, wow. There we are. I want to begin by just contextualizing a little bit of where we're at with respect to Russell Brand, and then go from there. Okay, so Russell Brand, well-known British comedian and actor, currently facing 5 criminal charges in the United Kingdom, including 1 count of rape, 1 count of oral rape, 2 counts of sexual assault, and 1 count of indecent assault. These charges are related to alleged incidents involving 4 different women between the years of 1999 and 2005. The allegations first became public in September 2023. You heard Brand talking about that. The allegations first became public in September 2023 following a media investigation by Channel 4 and The Times, which prompted a Metropolitan Police investigation. Now, I don't know the exact dates, but somewhere in fall of 2023, Brand started talking about interest in Christianity and Jesus, which is, by the way, very common when you have people who are master manipulators and predators. One way to deflect from accountability is to invoke a religious narrative. And that's what you see Brand beginning to do, culminating from those initial autumn 2023 discussions to his baptism on April 28th, 2024. Brand was formally charged in April 2025 and made his first appearance at Westminster Magistrates Court in May 2025, where he has been granted bail pending the trial to start next year, June 3rd, 2026. So where we are at now, in the moment that Frank Turek chooses to platform Russell Brand, is that Russell Brand has been charged with, again, just pull it up here, rape, oral rape, sexual assault, and indecent assault. So that's the first thing. Second thing is let's just get a little bit of perspective here. A state prosecutor or the Crown's prosecutor is not going to lay charges for which the threshold of evidence is beyond a reasonable doubt without a reasonable chance or likelihood, I should say, of conviction. In other words, the evidence available to the Crown would lead one to anticipate that they currently have a reasonable expectation that they will be able to meet the threshold of beyond a reasonable doubt in terms of the evidence they have for these allegations. That doesn't mean Brand is guilty. It does mean that people with a background in assessing evidence believe there is currently beyond a reasonable doubt threshold of evidence for a reasonable jury to convict Brand on these charges. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. That's where we are right now. Second thing is Brand himself admitted in this crazy clip that he was for years, apparently up until September 2023, he was, quote, worshiping sex. Do you think it's possible that a very powerful person like Brand, with a famous person, ever might have wielded their power, given that they worship sex, in such a way that it may potentially override somebody's consent and reach a criminal threshold of sexual assault or rape? Is that remotely possible? I mean, duh. That's the second thing. Brand himself indicts himself by speaking about his life, at least up to 2023, in those terms. Third thing is general observations about Brand. Over the last few years in particular, Brand has had a history of aligning themselves with all sorts of conspiracy theories since COVID-19, expressing vaxism, skepticism about the mainstream media and government overreach, promoting various dubious claims, including within the last 2 years, selling some bizarre crystal that I saw him doing like an infomercial for. So, third thing is this is not a person who is generally credible. So, you have outstanding allegations from four different women that the Crown believes have provided evidence that is sufficient to believe there warrants charges, that they would have a reasonable expectation of convicting on the balance or the evidential threshold of beyond a reasonable doubt. And then you have Brand himself admitting that for 20 years he worshipped sex, and that raising the likelihood that he's manipulated his power in the process and indeed engaged in abuse of individuals. And then third, the fact that he has a history of, frankly, being a huckster, being a bullshit artist, being a manipulator. And then fourth, actually, is the thing that I started with. Uh, sorry, I just gotta take a moment. Sorry, I just needed to pause to collect my thoughts. So the fourth thing was the thing that I already said at the beginning: is look at the timeline. Uh, these allegations become public in September 2023. Sometime in the fall of 2023, he starts talking about Jesus, which I said already parallels with the way that master manipulators, abusers, and predators often appeal to religious conversions to deflect from accountability and responsibility for their crimes and for their instances of abuse. With all that, would you put that person on your apologetics platform to talk about his conversion to Jesus? Or do you think it might be wise to maybe wait until at least May 2026 and see what happens with the court cases and the charges and the allegations? What, by the way, has been Brand's response to these four women? From what I can see, it's been to deflect, say it's false, and it's all a witch hunt. I would ask you, I have not interviewed these four women myself, but the Crown has. And the Crown has carefully assessed their credibility. And the Crown believes they are credible. They wouldn't have landed these charges if they did not believe these women to be credible. So you have four women, independent women, who are all believed to be credible and have made credible allegations against a man who says that he was worshiping sex for decades. On the other hand, you have somebody who's a huckster in a history of bullshit like Russell Brand. Would you platform Brand when there were outstanding allegations from those four women that hadn't even gone to a trial yet? So that he could talk about his conversion to Jesus and how he could imply that it's all a witch hunt? It's insane that somebody like Frank Turek, who claims to care about truth, would platform a huckster like Russell Brand. But of course, keep in mind that Frank Turek is a MAGA apologist. He's an apologist who worships at the throne of a MAGA gospel. And at the center of the MAGA gospel is that 13th apostle, Donald Trump, who himself has been found liable for sexual abuse of E. Jean Carroll by forcibly inserting his fingers into her vagina, who also has more than 24 unanswered allegations of sexual harassment and sexual abuse from different women over decades, who himself was caught on the hot mic boasting about sexually assaulting women, who paid off a porn star with whom he was having an affair when his wife was home with their newborn child, whose first wife accused him of having raped her. She later retracted those charges, but hey, it's tough to put the toothpaste back in the tube, isn't it? Who has cheated on every one of his three wives, who boasted about entering the Miss Teen USA pageants so he could catch the girls, the legal minors, in various states of undress within the dressing room, who for a decade or more was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, the world's most notorious sex trafficker. That is Donald Trump. That is the MAGA gospel of Frank Turek. Is it any surprise, given that he is a supporter of Donald Trump, that he does not care about women who have launched serious, credible allegations of sexual abuse and rape, and chooses rather to platform Russell Brand? It is absolutely despicable. Shame on you, Frank Turek.